an enemy that is causing destruction in our nation. Supreme Court ruled that Trump does have the right under that to send them packing, and then yet the ACLU files a lawsuit against that. And this morning at 1 a.m., then the Supreme Court sides with the ACLU. Is there money involved? Who runs the show? But I tell you what, we've brought Brother Dave from Why Tribe Blaze back on the show tonight. And how you doing there, Brother Dave?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. How's everybody in Smokehouse Studios doing tonight?
Probably, I'd say they're about like we are, man. They're frustrated and aggravated. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to be walking on uncharted ground here in the near future. We've got some big things coming. We've got the issue with the stock market that just keeps fuming. We have got Yemen and the attacks that are happening there. We've got threats from Iran. We've got what looks like could be an attack on Iran. Apparently, last week, Trump talked Netanyahu out of attacking Iran, which was a good thing. But we've got some big things coming down the pipe that we've never really experienced yet. And we need to listen to God's voice during these things. It's interesting that Ernest Light had a little example of this, and he was listening to shortwave radio. Me being a ham radio operator, I can relate. But in John 18, verse 37, it says, everyone who cares for truth, who has any feeling for truth, recognizes my voice. Now, Dave, you know, what was it? Probably 3 or 4 shows ago now, you and I did that about listening to the voice, you know, the good shepherd, the bad shepherd. Remember
Right.
that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is kind of dovetailing that message. But he stated that he first began to learn the discipline of listening when he became a shortwave radio listener. In me being a ham radio operator, I understand the need for detailed listening. But each year he entered the Boy Scouts of America shortwave listening contest, and awards were given to the Boy Scouts who listened to the largest number of shortwave broadcast stations in an exercise in various categories within a specified period in time. Now, the participants had to exercise diligence, flexibility, and patience. And in the midst of the long periods of silence on the shortwave radio, one might hear the sound of a station not previously heard before. So, Ernest was stating here that every good amateur radio operator listens before speaking. That's one thing that we do, David. Like, if I just turned the radio on, whatever specific band I happened to be wanting to transmit on at the time, you scroll through the frequencies, you find one that is not in use, and the first thing you do is you just sit there for about a minute or two and listen to make sure someone is not already accessing that frequency, and then start talking when you call them in between a break or something. And then if you don't hear them speaking, then you call out, you know, is this frequency in use? And if no one responds, well, then it's your frequency and you could do it and use it. But the purpose of a good ham operator is to be a good listener, to determine if someone else is already transmitting on that desired frequency. So, is another person saying something that you want to hear? Is there a conversation already in progress that one might wish to join? There are times when he said that he simply listens because it's so informative to hear what other people have to say. As a disciple of Christ, we have to understand, folks, that we find that we must shrink from the busyness of the days. I mean, there are times when we need to be silent and wait for the voice of God to speak in the silence of our lives. Ask God daily to teach us the discipline of listening. In the silence of our quiet times, we will hear the voice of Jesus. As we seek the truth, we will recognize Jesus and the voice of his truth. And A lot of this is noise, David. I mean, there are so many factions to just this one subject of Kilmar Garcia when the root of the matter is plain and simple. There's so many veins to this. And I believe, as the open, that's what's causing the noise. I mean, that's what's causing the distraction. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So, like you were talking about, listening is a very important skill. That's like one of the first things that I ever said when I first came on this program is you have to be willing to keep your ears open and your mouth shut. And that also includes your eyes, right? Your eyes and your ears open and your mouth shut. It's very important. A lot of people don't practice that of, varying ages. We like to think of the young crowd like myself, but it's all ages that people sometimes fall into old habits, thinking just because something is you have to update your information constantly, right? Because things are always changing in this world. So um just to kind of further along, like you were talking about with this Garcia thing, we're going to talk about it a lot today. I mean, we've got a lot that we want to say on this topic, but it all goes back to fact. Everything that we're going to say and everything that we're going to bring up on this topic today on this show is going to be based in fact. Nothing that we're going to tell you is inaccurate. It's not misinformation, as a lot of Democrats, bloggers, and posters like to say. TikTokers. Um, we are going to give you fact, and we're going to tell you good reasons for why we believe in what we believe in. I think the majority of you will agree that the case that we make is valid and makes sense.
It does. And I want to kick it off with the Alien Act of 1798, because this is very important as we get into later the congressman or the senator, excuse me, out of Maryland. But the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 was part of four laws that was known as the Alien and Sedition Acts that enacted increasing press regulations and restrictions against aliens. It was used as the basis for incarcerating enemy aliens and confiscating their property during World War II. As a result, a number of Japanese, Germans, and Italians were arrested and interned for the duration of the war and were later deported to their nations of origin. So, this Enemies Act has been used from 1798 even up into World War II. And so it was questioned, David. Trump brought it to the courts. Hey, I have a right to protect this nation via illegal aliens and enemies of our state under this act. The Supreme Court ruled on it, and they ruled that, yes, the president does have the right to remove these alien enemies. And so now, once Trump begins to start removing these alien enemies, now we have organizations like the ACLU trying to, I wouldn't say fly below the radar, but they're trying different avenues to try to countervent this Aliens Act to get the stoppage or the removal of these alien enemies in our nation, which brings me to an interesting concept we'll cover later. But go ahead and kick us off with this Kilmar Garcia there, Dave.
Yeah. So that's actually kind of a double offense, right? And the reason I say that is because not only, like you said, it goes back to all the way back to World War II and World War One. Did you say World War One or World War Two? I'm sorry. Which one was it?
Number two.
Number two. Okay. All right. So going all the way back to there, so it's a double offense on that, the fact that he's an illegal immigrant, right? And Donald Trump is using matters of fact that already exist that, like you said, the Supreme Court has already ruled on. But to further that point, the reason it's a double offense is because he is a known member of MS-13. Okay, so what do we know about MS-13? Donald Trump, a few months ago, made them a terrorist organization. Okay, so in that ruling, that gives him priority status to deport immigrants who are known to be associated with violent gangs. Okay, now getting even further into it, he actually does have a past of violent crime that the Democrats and people like CNN are trying to skirt under the rug and act like doesn't exist. And we're gonna talk about that. So the first time that he recently, we're not talking about things that happened in like 2003, because apparently he's actually had run-ins with the police all the way back to 2003. But I'm looking at a CNN article that was posted 7 hours ago. And the reason I'm going to cover a CNN article is because I think it points out the hypocrisy that we're seeing from a lot of left wing media organizations who are trying to paint this man as though he is simply a Maryland man who did nothing wrong and has never done anything wrong in his life and does not have a violent history. But he does. And the thing about it is, they actually, I'm so surprised that they put this on the article. They actually go over his violent crimes and address them. And when you cover this, you realize that this man is a violent man and he has a violent past. And we're going to start with 2019. This is where the coverage for CNN begins, is 2019. So he had a run in with the police where they were in the parking lot of Home Depot in Hyattsville. Um, let's see, that is Maryland, right? So they were apparently smoking marijuana in the parking lot of Home Depot, and when they were approached by police. And when they were approached by police, they were arrested, and they noticed the tattoos that were on Garcia's hand, and the fact that one of the men that he was hanging out with was a known and recognized member of MS-13 actively. Not a old member, no, he was an active member, okay? So they went ahead and arrested all, I believe it was three of them. Yes. No, it was four because it says other three men. So it was four in total, okay? They all get arrested. Now, the interesting thing about this is the person that he was with, that is a known MS-13 gang affiliate member, is actively under investigation for murder. Okay, this is this is somebody who hangs out with people who are known murderers at this point. Okay, so it goes on to say that Garcia was released. Okay, but they did keep tabs on him, and they did put him into a file to say, okay, this guy clearly has MS-13 ties. There is no getting around that. We don't have anything to pin on him right now, but we're going to keep our eye on him. Okay, so now let's fast forward to 2021. In 2021, his wife, let's see if they say, yes, Vasquez Sura is the name of his wife, petitioned to get a, let's see, what is the word that they use? A restraining order against Abrego Garcia. Now, the reason that she wanted a restraining order was because he hit her so hard that she was bleeding, right? And she was thrown to the ground, and she wanted nothing to do with him and described to police as afraid to be close to him, quote unquote. Okay. So these are things that are starting to paint a picture for you that this person is not who CNN wants to portray to you that he is, okay? They actively want a known violent gang member and criminal back into the country on the basis of what? Necessarily, do we want to say they're traitors to the country? Do we want to say that they care about other countries' citizens more than ours? Let's not forget, at the end of the day, he is an El Salvadorian citizen. He is not a citizen of the United States. Okay, so the last thing that CNN covers on this terrible article is a 2022 traffic stop. Now, this is the one that most of you have probably already heard of in the news, okay, because this is actually a really big deal in my mind. In late 2022, Abrego Garcia was pulled over in Tennessee for speeding and had told multiple other people had multiple other people in the car. A spokesperson for the Tennessee Highway Patrol told CNN that Abrego Garcia was flagged to federal law enforcement, who made the decision not to detain him. Okay, guys, and this is the thing that we keep trying to say over and over, and you get on these different shows and different panels where they might say that where's the proof that Biden was allowing illegal immigrants into the country and not vetting them, even the ones that are violent? They try to sit here and say that that didn't happen, but here is proof. This is CNN. This is an article from CNN who points out the fact that a federal officer made the decision not to detain him. So let's get further into this article on this specific traffic stop. On Friday, the White House also released an investigative referral from DHS that outlined the encounter in Abrego Garcia's immigration history. According to the report, Abrego Garcia told the officer that he was driving from Houston to Temple Hills, Maryland, to bring in people to perform construction work. Think about that, guys. He went from Houston to Temple Hills, Maryland. That is not, that ain't a weekend, getaway. No, that is a long haul. If anybody knows, it takes like 8 hours, probably longer, to get from one end to the other of Texas, okay? So that is a very long drive, and let's be honest, that'd make you a lot of money, okay? For legal reasons, I don't know if that's what happened, right? I have to throw that out there, but there was a lot of money going around for these MS-13 gang members who were actively using the Biden administration to get into this country and using it as a source of income, right? And there's an argument to be made that the Democratic politicians know that, and they're trying to help out Mexico and these MS-13 gang members to try to facilitate more crime. But for legal reasons, we don't have evidence of that, so we're not necessarily going to get into that. On Friday, Tricia McLaughlin, a spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, claimed that the facts surrounding Abrego Garcia's traffic stop reeked of human trafficking. I repeat that. A spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security claimed that the facts surrounding Abrego Garcia's traffic stop reeks of human trafficking, pointing to the number of people and lack of luggage in the car. Okay, so here you have a active spokesperson that is a part of the Department of Homeland Security who is telling you they believe it reeks of human trafficking, yet a federal employee decided to let them go and do nothing with them. Why is that, right? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves, which, let's be honest, most of the viewers who watch the show we already know the answers to these questions, right? But we have to point out the hypocrisy, because CNN is not going to stop making these bad articles, and they're in extremely bad faith, because even the video that they attach to this article is Caitlin Collins, who is an employee of CNN, as you could probably assume, wants to grill Tom Homan over the fact that a supposed DOJ member said that he was wrongfully deported. Okay, now I looked this up, okay, right before we came on the show. There is no article, there's nothing that says that a DOJ member or employee spoke out against this and said that he was wrongfully detained. So once again, it's just more made up stuff. And even if he did, that's his opinion. That does not speak for the entirety of the DOJ or itself as an organization, right? So essentially, you have, once again, Democrats grasping at straws, trying to bring a violent man into this country that for some reason they believe was wrongfully deported. And this is one of the last things that I'll say for now. We'll keep going back and forth, but the issue on fair trial, right? People giving these illegal immigrants having the right to a trial before they get deported. Okay, the problem with that is the CNN themselves just told on themselves on how people like Abrego Garcia were bringing people into the country and federal agents chose to do nothing with it, okay? Now, you could say that's not corruption, blah, 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 but that's not playing by the rules, right? We all understand that's the wrong thing to do, okay? So they want Donald Trump to play by the rules and give every single one of these illegal immigrants a right to a court date, when in reality that would take over 100 years to do. Okay, which they understand. That's part of why they did this. And we also understand what the Biden administration wanted to do was turn these people into voters, right?
That's the plan. Yeah. Yeah. Because they know how long it would take.
Exactly. And so it's a big picture that I don't know. Maybe the Democrats are trying to save face, and or they're just letting you know straight up who they are. I don't know if they've just decided that all masks are off now. We need to let everybody know who we are and just come out in full force and not hide it anymore, right? I mean, you have Tim
Yep.
Waltz who said that we weren't woke enough. He literally, and I've got that video on my page if anybody wants to check it out. It's Tim Walz literally speaking to a crowd of Democratic voters saying we were not woke enough. We did not own this enough. That is absolute lunacy. This is the same guy that wanted to allow grown men dressed as a little girl into the same bathroom as your daughter, right? So that's a huge problem in my mind. And all I got to say is, once again, thank God that they lost this most previous election.
Well, I've said it all the time on this program, and it's basically fact. They create the problem so that they can usher in their solution, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so having illegal aliens in here, they can push the narrative that we're racist, and they can get that narrative in the minds of their followers, all right? They can push the narrative of have all of these aliens voting for them to keep them in office. They've got that covered. And then with the crime and all of that they bring, now they've got their excuse for gun controls and grab the guns. So the the mode to having these illegal aliens in here covers a vast variety of avenues that they can use them for, because that's all they're doing is just using them, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
And so Carolyn Levitt, these reporters are always hammering and grilling her, give us the receipts, give us the receipts on this. And she did. And she came bearing exactly what David said. Here she goes.
The Democrats and the media in this room have continually and wrongly labeled Kilmar Abrego Garcia as a Maryland father. There is no Maryland father. Let me reiterate. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist who was deported back to his home country. And when Kilmar Abrego Garcia was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money covering the ears, mouth, and eyes of presidents on various currency denominations. This is a known MS-13 gang symbol of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Abrego Garcia was also arrested with two other well-known members of the vicious MS-13 gang. And two separate judges found that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13, and that finding has never been disputed. And just this morning, it was revealed through Maryland court documents that Abrego Garcia's wife petitioned for an order of protection against him for 2 instances of domestic violence in May of 2021. And here is the order right here. The court ordered that the respondent committed the following acts of abuse. Once in May of 2021, assault in any degree. And on May 4th of 2021, he punched and scratched his wife, ripped off her shirt, and grabbed and bruised her. This is from a court in Maryland. So not only are Democrats rushing to defend an illegal criminal foreign terrorist gang member, but also an apparent woman beater. To set all of that aside, the basic fact that he was illegally inside our country and had a lawful deportation order made him subject to removal back to his home country of El Salvador. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again.
My question, David, is where's all the pink hats? Where's all the Me Too movements just merely on him beating his wife, right?
Well, between that and, I've got the video of Jasmine Crockett saying, we don't want to, we're done picking cotton, we're talking about the illegal immigrants being sent back, and it's like you said, they're just trying to use them. That's all that it's for. She looks at illegal immigrants the same way a slave owner looked at slaves. I feel like
Right.
that tells a lot about how you view these illegal immigrants. You don't genuinely care for them as a person, which there's argument to be made that Garcia should not be given sympathy of any kind, right? But just you guys claim to have all this sympathy for him, but in reality, you just use him for votes and, like she says, to pick cotton. She said it, not me.
Well, then we have Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, where this Garcia resided over here. And he was going to go to El Salvador and broker a deal to bring him back. Now, he was wanting to meet with President Bukele, but the president didn't meet with him. However, he was able to meet with Garcia. Now, he doesn't have executive privilege per se to meet with foreign leaders without permission. Now, here is the argument here. Now, under the Logan Act, and that's why I told you to hang on to the Alien Enemies Act of 1789, that date, 1789, because the Logan Act was created in 1799. And what that act is basically it is a federal law in the United States that prohibits private citizens from communicating with foreign governments to influence their conduct in matters of dispute with the U.S. It was enacted in 1799 and is named after George Logan, who traveled to France in 1798 to negotiate with government officials without official authorization. The law is primarily intended to prevent unauthorized interference in foreign relations by private citizens, ensuring the U.S. government maintain control over its diplomatic efforts. Now, here's the argument here, David. This Logan Act was put in place for private citizens. That would be like you or I going over there and doing that, right? And however, also in this act, the private citizen can go over there if we had official authorization. We have seen that happen before with our actors under the Democrat Party when we saw the actors going over to other countries to try to persuade, right? They had authorization from that administration, so that was okay. Now, here's the question. Now, he is a sitting senator. So, by his title alone, does he have official authorization to go over there? Or is he still considered more of a citizen going over there because he did not have official authorization? That I don't know. But here's the scope. It applies to U.S. citizens who, without the authority of the U.S. government, engage in correspondence or intercourse with the foreign officials with the intent to influence their conduct in dispute of the United States. They've got to have U.S. government authorization, or they have broken the Logan Act. So this is a slippery slope because who in the U.S. government, David, would be responsible in giving them the authorization to go? Would it be the executive branch? Would it be the judicial branch? Would it be the legislative branch? I know the legislative branch can't give authorization. So he goes over there and he meets with Garcia. Garcia's fine. He's got clean shirt, clean jeans. He's not in this terrible prison that the Democrats are making it out to be. And now the ACLU has jumped in, filed a lawsuit, and now they have blocked the Alien Enemies Act through the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court just said, yeah, you can use the Alien Enemies Act on these Venezuelans that are in Texas waiting to be extradited to El Salvador. So what say you, man?
Well, so the thing that I'm harping on right now that I'm thinking about with all this being said is the judges that are actively trying to target the Donald Trump administration, and they're trying to force Donald Trump, essentially. They're trying to strong arm him into going into El Salvador, kidnapping a prisoner in their Supermax prison who is also a citizen of El Salvador, bring him back into a country in which he's already been deported from twice, and is known to have gang and violent ties, right? So the thing about it is the judges cannot force Donald Trump to do any of that. The only thing that they can do is tell him that he must facilitate the bringing back of Garcia, right? And the thing about it is El Salvador does not want to let him back into the United States. The judges cannot control what El Salvador does, and they can also not punish Donald Trump if El Salvador doesn't want to send him back to the United States. Um, so to me, I know we're gonna get into this later. I don't want to give any spoilers, right? We're gonna touch on the Latita James situation. I hope I didn't spill the beans too soon, right?
No,
But okay, all right. We're going to touch on that. But when we get into these judges, right, and these officials and these DAs in certain districts, you see continuous corruption and people trying to extend their powers further than they can even reach. Yet here we have Donald Trump using things that the government has already not only had voted on in the Supreme Court, but also like take for instance Doge. It was already a government organization far before Donald Trump ever got into office. He just rebranded it, right? So he's always confining within the means of his parameters when it comes to being a president. He has always done that, okay? Even with the tariffs, even with everything going on with China. Everything that he is doing is based in something that has already been voted on or deemed allowed to a president. They just don't like the fact that Donald Trump is using it to his benefit and to our benefit as American citizens.
and Sebastian Gorka said it the best.
You have to ask yourself, are they technically aiding and abetting them? Because aiding and abetting criminals and terrorists is a crime in federal statute, Rob. The taxonomy of politics in America is dead. It's not left and right. It's not even Republican or Democrat. There's one line that divides us. Do you love America or do you hate America? It's really quite that simple. And we have people who love America, like the president, like his cabinet, like the directors of his agencies, who want to protect Americans. And then there is the other side that is on the side of the cartel members, on the side of the illegal aliens, on the side of the terrorists.
So, exactly whose side are they on? Now, to kind of dovetail what you were saying earlier, Cory Booker was out there making the round. See, they have to continue to fill their base's mind with the narrative that they're trying to push. They have to continue to do it. And Cory Booker is out there making the rounds as the spokesperson right now. And he was on the liberal media the other day, and listen to the hypocrisy. David, how many times have you heard us talk about when Christ warned the disciples about the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees after he called them hypocrites, right?
Yep.
That fermented, rotten spirit that is in them that they cause to rise up, that leaven. Listen to what Cory Booker had to say.
Do you think the Trump administration is defying a court order?
It certainly appears that they are, and they're trying to play too cute with parsing words. The court has ordered the return of this person and that the Trump administration should do it. They're paying an authoritarian leader in El Salvador to hold people in the worst imaginable types of prisons that he has sent there without any due process. And this isn't just about Mr. Garcia. This is about every American understanding that this president is making an assault on the due process rights that are afforded to people in our country. Everybody from Anton Scalia to other conservative think tanks have said very clearly, you cannot disappear people off American streets. We are a nation of rules, and due process is clearly one of them. And to erode the due process rights of anyone is a threat to the due process rights of everyone. This is a democratic slippage, and we all should be speaking out against it.
Trump didn't get due process. I do remember the what's that lawyer or the mayor of the New York, Giuliani. Giuliani didn't get any due process. When Giuliani hit court, the judge said, "You're already guilty. We're just going to determine what your punishment is going to be." So when it's the Republican side, you don't get due process. But now that their side is facing issues, well, it's all about due process. Do you see the hypocrisy, Dave?
Oh yeah, no, I do, and it's actually really frustrating because, like you said, it's one side, do as I say, not as I do, or however the saying might go, right? They themselves want to break the rules, yet they want Donald Trump to play by the rules. And we've said this word 1,000 times: hypocrisy, hypocrisy. But it goes even further than that. You have judges that are actively participating. You have senators that are actively participating. Hell, you had a president that was participating, right? So it's essentially what we have to do is understand that, like you played in that clip, there are people who love America and there are people who hate America. There are some people that try to dress up their hate for America as sympathy for others, like Palestine, right? Or let's say Iran, okay? These people who either don't even necessarily know what's happening in this situation or just run with the narrative that they see on social media because it's what their friends are saying and they don't want to be outcasted by their friends, right? So it's like you said, they have to continuously uh, beat down the brow of the Democratic voter. Otherwise, they're going to understand that everything that they've been voting for the last probably since Hillary Clinton, right, has been nothing but a lie and a farce, and their party essentially pulling on their heartstrings and using their sympathy for votes, which is disgusting in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it actually is. So, to tie a ribbon on this whole Garcia issue, Trump and Bukele in their press conference this week, and Rubio kind of set the standard and set everything straight. Here we go.
Well, I'm also not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right? I mean, how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States. You could release him inside El Salvador. Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal,
Yeah,
released.
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
I mean, exactly right. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with everything he's saying. Stephen Miller actually pointed out exactly like they were saying. It's not only hypocritical, but it's also what was the word he used? It was, I think he said inflammatory, or basically we were assuming that we had the right to tell the president of El Salvador what to do with his prisoner and citizen, right? Which is which is extremely wild for them to try to say that they want Donald Trump to go and do something like that. But like in the clip that you said, the clip that you played, the president of El Salvador does not want to facilitate the return of this person, and he was returned to his country of origin, which is what you do, right? And another thing that does blow my mind, if you look up like on CNN and whatnot about this Supreme Court ruling, like Stephen Miller's talking about, a lot of the left-leaning sites, just like he said, are painting it as a loss. They're saying that the Supreme Court ruled in favor against the Trump administration. But here you have the security advisor to the United States Homeland Security, right, saying otherwise, saying that no, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Trump administration and voted that yes, he does need to stay over there. Now, ultimately, what I think he's saying is because we cannot go get him. They have to facilitate, and there is no desire to facilitate bringing him back into the United States. So at the end of the day, they did side with the Trump administration, and the left is losing their minds and trying to spin it to say that no, he lost because he must go get him. But look, we can sit here and debate all of that all we want, right? But the most alarming thing of this all is we have members of our political party, not our political party, the Democratic political party, and just political sphere in general, who actively are going against the interest of the United States and actively facilitating illegal immigrants coming into this country. That just blows my mind. It really does. And they really do it in the name of not liking Donald Trump, right? That goes back to them trying to make sure he did not win this most previous election. They really 100% believed that Donald Trump was going to go away after this. But the thing is, they actually made his case stronger day by day by day the further we got to election day, right? I don't know if you guys remember, like 6 months before he ran, probably a little bit before that actually, it was looking a little iffy whether or not he was going to win because all of the things that the Democrats were trying to throw at him. They're trying to throw him into the prison. They, shot at him, right? They tried to take his life more than one time. And here it is. He's the president and won the popular vote. That terrifies them. And it secures in their minds the fact that they are losing touch with reality and voters. And going back into, like we said, with the illegal immigrants, that's why they feel like they need illegal immigrants into this country, right? Because their voter base won't exist. If they continue down this road that they are going down, even the people who actively hate America are going to realize there's a whole lot less of them than there are like us, people listening to this radio show, people who want to further the American interest and essentially make America great again, right? Like that's kind of the whole thing. And we're not ashamed about it, right? The previous administration tried to make everybody on the other side feel bad and push this narrative that people are racist and homophobic and blah, 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 right? So we're getting past all of that. We're finally moving in the right direction as a country. And people like Stephen Miller, the United States Homeland Security Advisor, are doing a great job in fighting this corrupt media who just wants to further this narrative that the United States is a bad place to be, which we all know is not true.
And there is a narrative that they're about to reach for. Check this out.
The White House is trying to undo all of this right now. And Democrats are protesting for illegal alien gang members who have already been deported to be brought back to the United States. That's how broken that party is.
This is what kicking the out of fascism looks like.
I am an immigrant. I am undocumented. We're unashamed. So we are very big on the chanting, and y'all have all the energy today. So, no Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
If you've got the means to unlawfully deport someone, you find the means to bring them back.
Bring them back. They want criminals back in the country. This is a Democrat-endorsed plan. For 4 years, Joe Biden claimed he needed Congress to close that border. That was a lie. According to the Department of Homeland Security today, illegal border crossings in March dropped to their lowest levels in recorded history, dropping by over 95% from what they were 1 year ago.
And that was Finity from Newsmax. And so here's the narrative, see. Bring them back, because they're not labeling them as what they're labeling them as asylum seekers that have the right to be over here. My point is, this is what they're going for. This is going to be the next impeachment. But they've got to build the narrative. They've got to get everybody's mind in that mindset that they aren't criminals, that they are asylum seekers. That's going to be their next impeachment attempt. What do you think?
Okay, well, that's actually that's definitely a new one I've heard. I In my mind, I'm wondering if it's even a strong enough position for them to stand on for grounds of it. Um, what was the word you just said?
Impeach.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know why that slipped my mind. I don't. In my mind, I'm not sure that's enough grounds, even because look, most of the arguments they'll ever bring against Donald Trump are bad and weak and don't make sense, right? But even this immigration one specifically, you would have to come to the aid and try to defend a terrorist organization. Let's not forget, Donald Trump has labeled MS-13 a terrorist organization. That's like one of these senators going to Iran or Somalia and, actively engaging with somebody that we deem a terrorist over there, right? It's insanity. It's pure insanity. And like I'll keep saying this. It's a huge point in my mind that Donald Trump won the popular vote. Um, right now, people are not regretting their votes for Donald Trump. So I'm not sure why they would ever think that this was a argument strong enough for them to stand on to try to impeach Donald Trump because look, I know they're going to try, right? Like they're going to, even if they have no argument to stand on, they're going to do it because they've already shown their true colors. They've already lost so severely, so hard. I don't think they're afraid of losing again, even in an extremely embarrassing way. We know the Democratic Party has no shame, right? So this current one, let me just say that, not all Democrats, but this current Democratic administration that we're seeing has no shame. And they are not afraid of going down in a ball of flames if it means that they try to take Donald Trump with them. Now, will that happen? No, I don't think so. I think more so they would just go down in a ball of flames in failure. I don't think they'd be able to take Trump with them. But it definitely opens up the door for a new conversation for what the Democratic Party is trying to push narrative-wise and how far they're really going to go with it. I'm interested to see because I'm not necessarily intimidated at all by the Democratic Party or anything that they do, right? Anything that they try to say they have Donald Trump on, I'm not entirely or really ever convinced that it's legitimate or truthful, right? So that's why I say it'll be interesting to see because I think once again they're going to show their true colors and embarrass themselves.
That's my whole point. See, go back and look at the past impeachments that they have tried to pull on Trump. They have had to grill and grill and grill and grill their narrative to get their base fired up, and then they go for the kill, for the impeachment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they're doing again. It's the same tactics. They're grilling and they're grilling and they're grilling their narrative that these people have rights and that Trump is the bad guy. And once they feel that they've got enough base, then they'll try and play that card. And here's why, because I've got your girl here. Jasmine Crockett was talking about this in Congress the other day, and listen to what she had said.
My Republican colleagues are here using today to continue pushing this false narrative of sanctuary cities harboring criminals. Yet right here in D.C., we have a 34-count felon being harbored in the White House. The hypocrisy coming from your side of the aisle over concerns regarding lawlessness is outrageous. Right now, House Republicans town halls with constituents lying about our legal system. That, quote, there is no due process if you come here illegally because you violated the law. That immigrants, quote, are not entitled to due process. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that.
Do you see what I mean, man? On that narrative, they're skewing it now, and now they're basing it on, wait a minute. These people, once they get their narrative set in their base's mind, now they can say, well, we've got a 34 indicted, 34 count convicted felon in the White House. Now, that's going to be their little trampoline, man. That's what they're going to use to jump in the fact that they're right. And I believe at some point they're going to pull that card. I really do. I mean, we're just from the 12 years I've been following this, that's exactly what they do. They build their narrative.
Well, that just blows my mind that she would even try to have that hill to die on because, look, you can say that's not in the Constitution all you want, okay? But let's go back to the things that we've already identified earlier in this podcast, okay? He is an active member of MS-13. He has gang ties. He was arrested with somebody who was actually investigated, and I don't know if he was charged for murder or not, but I know he was an active participant, and I believe he did get something for it. But Garcia was deemed not an active participant in that crime simply because they didn't have the evidence, right? It blows my mind that this is the hill that they want to die on because you can say it's not in the Constitution, but the the moment Donald Trump made them a terrorist organization, it changes everything. It changes everything. He's legally allowed to deport them. Okay, I'm pretty sure if he wanted to detain him, he could do that too. If he wanted to put him in a supermax prison here in the United States, which we don't support, right? We don't want to pay taxes for somebody like that to sit in a prison. Send him back to El Salvador, where he is a citizen, right? That's where he's from.
Exactly. So their hypocrisy, she's talking about us having hypocrisy because he's a 34 count convicted felon. This moves us into the lady, the AG that was responsible for a lot of that, getting that kicked over to that other attorney and bringing Trump into trial for all of his real estate issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
These felonies that she's talking about were due to Trump's shenanigans and quote unquote real estate deals. When it was proven by the banks that, hey, we didn't lose any money. He paid all of his debt. We were happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they still, now not only did they convict him of those 34 felonies, they didn't even do it under a unanimous decision of the jury that the law states they have to do. The judge said if there's just 2 or 3 of you who can find him guilty on some of these things, well, then he's guilty of them all. And check this out with Letitia James. Oh, well, I tell you what. Before we get to what she is involved with, let's take the listeners back to the moment Trump got into the White House and Letitia James says, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing going after Trump.
Yes, I'm prepared. I'm ready. I've been trained by the best. I went to Howard University. That overturned segregation in this country. I've been taught in those classrooms where Thurgood Marshall once taught.
Uh-oh.
I'm not afraid of no president. Donald Trump, we're ready for you. We're coming for you. We're standing up for you. We're fighting on. We're not going down.
Okay. He becomes president, buddy, and she is full bore, right? And then she comes out and she's degrading Trump for these crimes that he committed in their eyes.
White collar financial crime is not a victimless crime. When the well connected break the law to take in more money that they are entitled to, it reduces resources to working people, to regular people, to small businesses, and to all taxpayers. Everyday people cannot lie to a bank about how much money they have in order to get a favorable loan to buy a home or to send a kid to college. And if they did, the government would throw the book at them.
Oh, man. Okay. So she's talking about white collar crimes and how vile it is, right, David?
She's the AG for New York, right?
Yep.
Think of all the violent crime that actually happens in New York right now. that is happening right now as we speak and do this podcast. Yeah, she's trying to paint white collar as a violent crime. Okay, all right.
Well, and think of all the crimes that has happened, women being raped, people being murdered the whole time they were going
Exactly.
after Trump for these bogus charges. And this week, a criminal referral has been filed against New York Attorney General Letitia James. Oh, how the tables turn. Letitia James made a name for herself by accusing Donald Trump of real estate fraud. Now she's facing very similar accusations, and at the time, she's the one under investigation now. Now, we have a formal complaint sent to the Department of Justice that says James faked mortgage documents. She gave false information on loan applications and she lied about key property details. If proven true, she could be charged with serious federal crimes like wire fraud, bank fraud, and making false statements to a financial institution. The complaint says, now check this out. In 2023, while still working as New York's Attorney General, James claimed a Virginia home was her main residence so that she could get better mortgage terms. And this happened just weeks before she went after Trump in court for real estate fraud. Now, here's what makes that important. Under New York state law, an attorney general of that state must reside in that state. She cannot reside out of state. But she's claiming here that that Virginia home was her main residence the whole time she was the attorney general of New York going after Trump. But it doesn't stop there. She owns a Brooklyn building officially listed as having 5 units, but she repeatedly submitted documents saying it only had 4. That small change could have helped her avoid stricter housing rules and qualify for a lower mortgage rate. The complaint filed by FHFA Director William Palute also pointed to older documents where James allegedly listed her father as her husband on a loan application, another move that may have helped her meet bank requirements. Irony that Letitia James is now being accused of doing the same kinds of things that she went after Trump for. The hunter has now become the hunted. This is a glorious development. So here's what I want to ask you, Dave, to see if you kind of feel the same. This house that allegedly she's claiming as her main residence in Virginia is not very far from D.C. Well, it's not called D.C. anymore. Trump changed that. It's just now called Washington. But that Virginia home is not far from Washington. And I'm just spitballing. I have nothing to back this up. This is just my opinion. But claiming a residence that close to Washington, right about the time that she started these charges against Trump, leads me to believe possibly was she promised an attorney general of the United States position if the Democrats were to win, and that was her incentive to go after Trump so that she could gain that position. What say you?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And that kind of goes back to like, okay, who was Biden's advisors? Who was doing the things that supposedly, quote unquote, Biden was doing while he was president? It's probably the same people that, like you said, speculation, right? We're not saying this is true 100,000%. Speculation that these could be the same people who want to offer Letitia James an AG position because she's just as corrupt as the rest of them. Yes, that makes a ton of sense. And now she's not going to be able to save face. And, I think that even lends more credit to the argument that possibly Democrats had a lot more to do with the assassination attempt against Donald Trump's life. I think it gives more credence to it, right? We're not saying that's what happened. Okay, legal reasons. We're not saying that. But what we are saying is we're paying attention and we're noticing patterns. It is not, it is not, in my personal opinion, a coincidence that, like you said, she would get a home so close to Washington, to the point where, yeah, she probably was promised that, and if she would have been given a house in Washington, that would have been too obvious, right? They can't do that. That would have been almost guaranteed. But even still, and now she's stuck with this. She's not going to be able to remove that. Um, so hopefully, I'll be honest. I hope she gets found guilty for all of this, all of these things. It sounds kind of similar, based off of what you told me, to what Donald Trump was charged for. Which, Lord, I hope that's true. Right? I hope that's true, and I hope she gets hit with the full extent of the law, just like Donald Trump did. And the difference is she's not gonna she's not gonna be president to get her little way out of it. Right? She's gonna have to own up for what she did.
Well, let me share a little biblical story with you. There's a little book called Esther in the Bible. And to put it in layman's terms, the king she escaped over into Persian territory, okay? Because the Jews are being killed over there in Israel. And she and her, I think he was her uncle, Mordecai, they escape over into the Persian area to escape the slaughter. And they had to pretend that they were not Jews. Well, the king of Persia saw Esther and took a liking to her. And so he had her brought into the chambers and he fell in love with her. Mordecai, her uncle, was still, living outside the gate in the city. And he got a message to her and he's like, look, you're going to have to tell the king now that he's in love with you that you're a Jew. And he may kill you for doing that, but you have got to do this and tell him that your people are being killed in Israel by his armies. And you need to do what you can to help save your people, even if it costs you your life. And that's where we get the saying in the book of Esther that, she was born for a time such as this. I mean, this is a good story to read in the, just to, if you question yourself, why am I here in these days? It's because you were born for such a time as this. Well, Haman was one of the top military guys of this king. And he had come to the king and said, look, we need to start rounding up the Jews around here. Can we kill them? And he's like, yeah. And so Haman goes out and starts building gallows to hang the Jews on. And finally, Mordecai convinced Esther, look, they're going to start killing the Jews over here. You've got to stand in the gap for our people with the king. So Esther prepares a dinner for the king, and she comes clean to the king that I'm a Jew. And he's like, what? And she's like, yes, and your army are slaughtering my people over there, and I'm pleading for their safety. Even if it costs me my life with you, I am begging you, save my people. And the king was so in love with her that he said, okay, all right, I will do that. I will stop the killing of the Jews since they are your people because I love you so much. And she goes, well, they're going to start killing them over here too. And he said, well, which one is the one that's going to be killing them? And she said, Haman, the one that you gave the authority to build the gallows. So the king of Persia then sent out another army to Haman and his men. They had just about had the gallows built. And the king commanded Haman and all of his men to be hung on the very gallows that he had built for the Jews. And then the king came out with this decree, which is known as Purim, the day of Purim, where he gave the Jews the right to go out and kill their enemy on this day of Purim because of Esther. So Esther saved her people, and Haman was hung on the very gallows that he had built for the Jews. And Israel still celebrates and recognizes Purim every single year. It rolls around. We just had our latest Purim back in March. But they still recognize that holiday, well, not holiday, but that decree that king established that day where Israel has the right to go after their enemy. But my point of that whole story is here we have Haman, who had the authority to go after the Jews, and it wound up Haman was hung on the very gallows he had built for the Jews. And so every time I see situations like this, David, where we have a Haman type like Letitia James and those that are trying to go after people who are doing good, and then the tables turn where it looks like, hey, this is backed biblically. This is backed biblically that it appears that Letitia James could possibly meet the fate that she had originally established for Trump. And so that, to me, gives me hope here. What say you?
Wow, that honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head there. You described that perfectly. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I actually agree with you. Typically you see things like that. People who want to point the finger and say, "Oh, everybody, look at what's going on over here," but in reality, they're the ones doing it. Right along the same lines of what you just said. I don't think I could have said it better. Better, and I think that was actually I didn't know that story about Esther. I did not know that, so I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Well,
A- and
you're,
wh- go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh,
Well,
well,
I was going to go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and it was very clear and concise. And yeah, I think everybody listening is going to agree that that's exactly what we're seeing right now, especially with it coming to Letitia James. Right, that's very specific example. Does seem like biblically accurate and very telling of what she has in her future. Right.
Well, it does. And this brings me not only with Letitia James, but here we have Tulsi Gabbard. She's now the head of national intelligence, all right? And she has started releasing documents that they had under COVID. Now, folks, I'm going to share something very interesting with you that just dropped yesterday. This dropped yesterday. Have you gone to whitehouse.gov and looked under COVID-19?
I have, yes, I have seen it.
Yeah. Well, if our listeners have not, you need to go to whitehouse.gov and you need to look under COVID-19. I'm trying to get it pulled up here, and I will tell you what it says. I didn't have this one ready. Just give me a second.
I'll touch on it while you look it up. So, when you go, you'll find that it has lab leak in huge letters with Donald Trump on the front of it, and it says the true origins of COVID-19. And whenever you get on the page, just let me know, and I'll let you take over. But
All right.
oh, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, go
And
for it.
it's whitehouse.gov. COVID-19. Actually, you can go to covid19.gov and it takes you to the White House. It has a picture of Trump right in the middle of the big little words, lab leak, the true origins of COVID-19. The origin, the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, which was used repeatedly by health officials in the media to discredit the leak lab theory, was propounded by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 was originated naturally. Number one, the virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. Fact. Number two, data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to the previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. Number three, Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain of function research. Wuhan, number 4, Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers were sick with COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 2019 before COVID-19 was discovered. And number 5, by nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already been surfaced, and it has not. And you can
Anybody
just
watching
read
on my
on
page,
and on
if
and on of the
you're
facts
only
that they
using
have
audio, go
produced,
ahead
that
and look
it
at my page. I've
was
got it pulled up.
a man-made gain-of-function virus that was not of nature. All of the lockdowns and the procedures and all of that was to basically lock us down and control us. Now, it does not say this part on the website. This is my input, but it was used to steal the election, period. Into discussion. So go to covid19.gov and look at that. The truth has now come out on that. Now, it's interesting that they posted that yesterday when Tulsi Gabbard, who is the head of intelligence, put out leaked documents, or actually classified documents. It's unclassified now. How they had terms and conditions already put in place under the Biden administration on how that they were going to implement various things. There are all of these pillars that they were going to introduce. And basically, I'll just cover 2. They were going to rein in proliferation of ghost guns that encourage state adoption of extreme risk protection orders and give other executive legislative action, including banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. And these high-capacity magazines was very vague, meaning basically they were going to knock us down to like a single-shot musket would be the only firearm that we could have, right? It goes up here that the intended impact in this is to stop lethal. Lethal means for perpetrating acts of domestic terrorism and reducing that. A greater care is provided earlier to potentially dangerous individuals. Norms of nonviolent political expressions and rejection of racism and bigotry are strengthened. Americans have increasing faith in democracy and government, increase intervention and care for those who pose a danger to themselves or others, strengthen civics education that promote domestic resiliency, and increase civic engagement to foster social cohesion. Folks, these are the orders that they had put in place to control a society under this COVID-19. It wasn't just to steal an election. Also, in 4.1.1b, to implement the COVID-19 hate crime acts to address hate crimes, reporting barriers faced by disadvantaged communities, by promoting law enforcement training and resources to prevent and address bias-motivated crimes, improve federal hate crime data and analysis to eliminate hate crimes under reporting, to mitigate xenophobia, whatever that is, and bias, including by advancing inclusion in the nation's COVID-19 response. So basically, it goes on and on. But here's what they were going to do. Under this COVID act they're trying to push under the Biden administration basically is, we're going to put this under the COVID mandate, but if you speak out against the government, if you speak out against our narrative on COVID, if you deny bigotry and racism and all of that, you're going to be considered a domestic terrorist. And then under domestic terrorists, well, we're going to start limiting your magazines and these ghost guns and blah, blah, blah. And so basically, they were going to increase law enforcement. In a nutshell, basically what Tulsi Gabbard put out is, if you do not toe the line and bow to this government administration guidelines, you're going to be labeled as a domestic terrorist under this COVID-19 deal, and you're going to be dealt with accordingly. Can you believe that, man?
That's insane. No, I mean it's the Democrats' playbook, and that I feel like it goes back to why they're so upset that they didn't win. They had all these plans to, tell people what they can and can't do with their weapons, and essentially try to take them from them. All of us, right? And I'm looking at this White House page still, um, and everything that you covered on the gun situation, and then wanting to use that to go after people who didn't even do anything wrong, right? Just necessarily express their political opinions online, right? And be labeled as a threat. It kind of goes back into the DOJ going after parents who were going to these parent teacher conferences and raising questions about what their children were learning in school and why. And the DOJ and Merrick Garland responded by labeling these individuals as violent, and I believe he gave them a title and didn't necessarily make them terrorists, but he put them on a terror watch list, right? Say you go to this meeting and you don't support what the school administration is pushing, and you openly go against that, you will be put on a list. And the DOJ confirmed that it was real and everything. And Dr. Fauci was given a pardon by Biden. Now, the thing about a pardon, right, is you can only be pardoned for crimes that you've already committed, right? So, why did Joseph R. Biden give Anthony Fauci a pardon when he hasn't supposedly committed a crime? Are you following my logic?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, now we know why.
exactly. And it goes further into the fact that yes, he lied to Congress about the origin of COVID, where it came from, and gain of function research. So, and the thing about it is, I'm not sure that this pardon will stick because he has not been found guilty of any crime up to this point. It's coming. I hope it is. We all hope it is, right? And honestly, in my humble opinion, I believe that the midterms, we're going to see a lot of information like this drop. I think they're sitting on a lot when it comes to human trafficking. I think they're sitting on a lot when it comes to the Epstein files and the island. And I think also, not to change the subject too much, the JFK documents coming out was a huge revelation and a huge step forward in being transparent with the American public. And if anybody here hasn't read those JFK files, I highly encourage you do. You'll have a great picture of what was going on. But to get back onto what we were talking about, with Fauci specifically, and the Wuhan lab and the mandates and everything that they did, um, things like social distancing, okay, the WHO, the World Health Organization, the mask mandates, the lockdowns, right? All of these things add up. And like I said earlier, the Democratic Party has no shame. The current Democratic Party that we're seeing today does not have shame, and they will not learn from their lessons. And like you said, they used COVID to forcefully take the election and essentially do what they want, right? And going forward, um, I genuinely hope that we see a change in the Democratic Party, because this isn't good. You guys have seen they've constantly gone around and say we have a constitutional crisis. I hate that that is a thing that is going around, because it's a narrative. It's a thing that we keep talking about over and over again. They have a narrative that they want to push, and it's getting so bad to the point that they literally have to create words and use them repeatedly over and over and over again, so their voters and their fan base and their loyalists essentially continue to spew these words. It's kind of like giving them a script, right? You're telling them what to say because this is the point that you're going to try to hammer home. And I think it speaks on to what you said earlier too about them wanting to stick Donald Trump with the impeachment, right? They're gonna stick with something, and more than likely it's going to be the issue on what did we say that it was going to be on? Was it the immigration that we
Right.
said we were going to? Yeah. And then, okay. So, and then Latita James getting the the house near Washington. I think all of this is starting to paint a picture, right? That they thought they were going to be able to swindle the election again. And even the last podcast that you and I did, we covered the Nashville bombing in the voting machines that had been moved, yet they thought that they were in Nashville, right? It's just attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt of people who hold no shame and no regard for the truth who are pushing this stuff. And I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the narrative now that they're going for is this whole extradition, this whole illegal alien deal. That's where they're basing their next impeachment charge, I guess you could say, on. But now that all this stuff is coming out, like Tulsi Gabbard releasing that on what they were going to do with COVID, at the same time that they put the COVID-19 information now up on whitehouse.gov, how convenient and is that? That's awesome. But it's coming out in the mainstream media. Let me take you back to Finity here on Newsmax, and he said it the best.
Joe Biden has got dementia. He was never in control or in charge, and as a result of that, bad actors were likely running the White House. The answer now is probably a combination of the two. It's answers, and Republicans have to investigate and possibly prosecute whoever perpetrated the greatest single crime in American history, and that's what this is. 15 million illegal aliens in this country in a 4-year period. These people should not be here. And it's time for Republicans to start doing exactly what Democrats did to them. People don't like the word revenge. Why not? It's time for that if it's warranted. When Donald Trump left office after his first term, Democrats prosecuted everyone. Steve Bannon went to jail. Peter Navarro went to jail. Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, Rick Gates, George Papadopoulos. Anyone who did anything related to Donald Trump got indicted because Democrats play dirty, and they are much better at it than Republicans.
And I have been fortunate and blessed to, during the course of being vice president, have many situations where it becomes clear to me that there are, people of every age and gender, by the way, who see something about being the first that lets them know they don't need to be limited by other people's limited understanding of who can do what.
Come on, man.
Wow, that's insane. Her word soup, it's insane. It gets worse and worse every time I hear it. At first, she sounds intoxicated, right? And then she just goes on to mumble a bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Right. But, Finity's right here on Newsmax. I mean, it's time. Trump has allowed, he told us in his first term, I'm going to be there to take all the slings and the arrows. I'm going to let them do everything to me so that he can set a precedent that, yes, it can be done. And now that the tables are turned, like with Letitia James and all this other stuff that's kind of starting to surface with the COVID and the illegal acts, John Solomon, listen, John Solomon was on, and he's got a letter that was declassified from Mike Morrell to John Brennan during this whole election cycle with Biden under the Biden laptop. Check this out.
Just the news obtained this email. This is a very important email. It comes from the former CIA director, Mike Morrell. Yes, the guy that organized that letter from the 51 intelligence professionals who tried to fake you into thinking that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation when it wasn't. It is between him and John Brennan, one of the signatories. You know who John Brennan is? He was Obama's CIA director, right? He's the guy that told Obama, hey, Hillary Clinton is doing a dirty trick on Donald Trump called Russia collusion. Well, this is just before the presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Hunter Biden's laptop is flinging out there. This is what Mike Morrell, former CIA director, tells his successor, John Brennan. Hey, sign this letter because I'm, quote, trying to give the campaign, particularly during the debate on Thursday, a talking point to push back on Trump on this issue. A man with a security clearance, a man with the title of CIA director, knew that he wasn't creating an intelligence product, a mere civic duty with 51 people. He was trying to create a political moment. Damning evidence. We'll try to find out if Congress has this letter, but this is a very important piece. It is the ultimate proof that what went out on that letter was a political dirty trick coordinated with the Biden campaign.
With the Biden campaign, John Brennan, all of them are involved. That's all coming out. This is my whole point. Trump took the slings and the arrows. He set the precedent. And now that we start to see tables turn, now I'm with everybody else. There ain't nothing that's going to happen until people start going to jail over this, and we're getting tired of waiting. But this Stephen Miller, he was asked. Oh, hold on. Stephen Miller was asked. Is Gitmo still open? Why did Trump make the statement that Bukele over in El Salvador should start building 5 more prisons and we'll just start sending American criminals over there? All right. I don't think he was referring to American citizens. I think he's referring to these elite that have been caught in their crimes. And the media is trying to grill Stephen Miller on this, asking him about Gitmo. Check this out.
Is Gitmo still open? Are there any illegal immigrants who have been taken to Guantanamo Bay today, or has that prison been closed?
No, it's wide open. Gitmo is open. There are a number of foreign terrorist aliens that are being housed at Gitmo, awaiting final removal to another destination. But what I want to be very clear on.
Can you tell me how many?
No, I cannot. That's operationally sensitive information.
Dozens or more?
It's a large number. The exact number is operationally sensitive to do with military and other considerations relating to the security of those who are there and the security of those who are operating the facility. But I want to be very, very clear about this, Bill. We've been living through a hoax. Nobody was mistakenly sent to El Salvador. He was ordered deported from this country in 2019. He's an illegal alien. His home nation is El Salvador.
There you go, buddy. Gitmo's open, and Trump's saying that Bukele needs to build more prisons in El Salvador. Pretty wild stuff. What say you, brother?
Man, I'll be honest. I don't really have a whole lot to add on that. It's very interesting that all of this is coming together the way that it is. It's, other than, like you said, the Pam Bondi stuff, where we're waiting around to see what her and Kash Patel put out. Dude, we've loved everything this administration's done, and then Stephen Miller is just a gem, right? Like, we can all agree. We all love Stephen Miller because he's not afraid of this super woke, super aggressive left media that is determined, right, to make the Trump administration and the Doge team and anybody associated with him as the worst people on the planet, people who don't know what they're doing, who are not only rude, but are also incompetent. Now, the thing that they lose me on is they try to paint Donald Trump and his administration as they are both, as if both, super evil masterminds and also incompetent. You can't have both be true at the same time, right? So they're very... Every argument that they have is very flinge and very it's not in good faith. And I think, look, I'm just going to keep saying this over and over again because I don't have anything specifically on this Gitmo thing because it just brings a smile to my face. Donald Trump won the popular vote for a reason, and nobody's regretted their vote. I haven't talked to a single person who voted for Donald Trump who regrets their vote. We are all proud of what's going on right now, and we're going to continue to support.
Well, and we want it to kind of kick in a lot quicker than it is, but you and I had kind of discussed a theory that we're going to kind of go back over and close the show with because we get just a few more. We can wrap this up. But Nikita, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, Nikita Kasap. It's Nikita Kasap. He's the teen who murdered his parents in Wisconsin in February and plotted to assassinate Trump. And he was not acting alone. The FBI records, now that Kash Patel is in charge, show that he was in contact with Ukrainians discussing how to carry out the attack and frame it as a Russian operation.
Wow.
And he also asked how soon he could flee to Ukraine afterwards and whether he'd be able to have a normal life there. This should have been headlines in the mainstream, but no mainstream media outlet has touched these public records. So the kid that killed his parents, basically, he was in contact with Ukrainians on how to assassinate Trump. Of course, they've got him in custody, but this is coming out. You see what I'm saying?
No,
There is. It's like a drip, 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 and then there's a flood of information. So, getting to our theory we talked about the other day, David. We're waiting on the Epstein files. Period. I mean, if we're not going to see the Epstein files, everybody's getting tired of waiting.
Oh, I agree, 100%.
And every time something like this comes up, we always are accused of falling into the narrative of just, oh, let's just kick the can on down the road because this is when it's going to happen, right? And then that time rolls around and nothing happens, and we get frustrated. But Trump came out a few weeks ago and stated that our midterm elections are going to be flawless, and that there are things that are put into place now that in the midterms will be exposing all of their treasonous acts. That's exactly what he stated. All right. And to me, the big things like, and I'm not trying to kick the can down the road, but the big things like the Epstein files and such like that. Right now, we're seeing the little things like COVID and this assassination attempt and Tisha James and all of this small fraud being exposed. But what if they're saving the bigger things closer to the midterms to really expose these people? Because if they let it loose right now, you know, the short-term memory of society will forget it the next day, you know. So what if they're waiting closer to the midterms to release the big stuff? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I do think that's probably what they're going to do. I'll be honest. But I will say, if we're going to criticize anybody in this whole thing, I think a little bit of criticism might go towards Pam Bondi, only because she did hype up this Epstein file case, and then the things that we got at the very beginning were not at all even close to what she had talked about, right? And so hopefully it will come to light at midterms, and that's what I'm hoping for. I think the most valid criticism out of that is she probably should have waited, right? To kind of make sure they have their timelines in order, because you don't want to get ahead of yourself, right? You don't want to get everybody ready and going, even if you have all of the information put together. At the end of the day, they kind of have to wait for Donald Trump to give them the signal on it all, really, because it's such a big, it's so much information and so many people that are going to be a part of this, right? It's going to be huge. And the numbers that we have on human trafficking, we already know people, it's like somewhere between like 80,000 kids a year get like trafficked, right? It's insane, the number. And there are people who are doing this. There are people who facilitate this, who have a lot of money, and they have people on the ground. And I think hopefully all these names come to the light. Hopefully all of this stuff is actually going to come to light. And we don't, like you said, we don't want to wait forever. A lot of us are getting frustrated because this is the reason that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel got the jobs that they got, was because of the promises that they gave us. So we just want to see these promises upheld, and to give a little bit of slack too, to give her some credit, is the JFK files, right? Now I know Donald Trump had a lot to do with that, but at the end of the day, she's the AG, so she also has a role to play to say what gets released at what time, right? And she played ball, and they released him, so it gives us good faith that they are going to do what's right, and we just have to be patient and optimistic, right? And just hope for the best at this point. That midterms, like you said, is going to reveal a lot of information that we haven't already heard or know about.
Yeah, I hope it yields some pretty fascinating stuff. So, folks, listening to that small, still voice, to kind of get back to our open, In John 18, everyone who cares for truth, who has any feeling for the truth, recognizes God's voice, and we have to be patient. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2 says, let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. That's who we need to put our faith in too, in all of this. And Trump, on this Easter weekend, had an outstanding message for America that we would not hear out of any other administration.
Nearly 2,000 years ago, during the sacred week, the living Son of God entered Jerusalem in triumph. Soon after, the Savior of mankind, who brought truth and light into the world, was betrayed, arrested, and tried, beaten, and nailed to a cross and crucified. For our sake, he gave up his life, and as the very great Reverend Billy Graham once said, God proved his love on the cross when Christ hung and bled and died. It was God saying to the world, I love you. 3 days later, Christ's followers found the empty tomb. Jesus had defeated darkness and death and promised new life to all of humankind. And that's what we celebrate each year at Easter as we joyfully proclaim on Sunday, he is risen. The death and resurrection of Jesus are the essence of the Christian faith. Whether rich or poor, healthy or sick, young or old, or in times of peace or war, Christians everywhere find solace and hope in the knowledge that Christ died for them and that they could be united with him in heaven. And that's what we want. That's what we all want. The miracles of Holy Week set in motion a transformation in human existence. Countless millions of Americans have been moved by Christ's example to heal the sick, defend their families, lift up their communities, and make our country stronger, better, and greater than ever before. With God's grace over these past 3 months, and we have had a great 3 months. They say maybe the best 3 months ever for a president and an administration. It was really great. We have fantastic people, and they're people that believe like you do. But we've achieved more than most administrations, they've been saying, do in 4 years or even 8 years, just in a short period of time. And I think there's a whole new spirit in our country, and I think there's a whole new respect for our country. Our country was not respected 5 months ago, 6 months ago, although I think November 5th did a lot to get that respect, Franklin. I think it was I think it was a big day. I hope it's going to go down as one of the most important days in the history of our country, November 5th. We're restoring our prosperity, securing our borders. We're rebuilding the U.S. military. I did it once, now I'm going to.
Anyway, that ended a little too soon. He did it once, he's going to do it again. All right, David, tie a ribbon on it for us there, brother.
Okay. Well, to just touch on everything that we've said, kind of just go over everything because I know it's been a little bit of a long one here. This might be one of the longest ones you and I have done together. So we started with the Garcia situation and the facts covering it, why it was within Donald Trump's parameters for him to be deported and stay in El Salvador. We touched on the Latita James situation and why her situation is just as corrupt in her mind, right? She tried to paint the picture that Donald Trump's situation was corrupt. Well, in her little world, she's just as complicit in a crime that she wants to hold Donald Trump accountable for. So she should be held to the full extent of the law as that'll go. And then on this final topic, I would say, yeah, we're going to see Democrats going forward with the COVID issue. They're going to continue to try to deny. But the facts are there. And the White House has already made their stance clear on how they feel the origins of COVID came about and Dr. Fauci's facilitation in creating the COVID-19 bioweapon and ultimately the lab leak being on his shoulders because he did participate in gain of function research and then lied to Congress about it. Okay. We've talked about a lot of different things today, and I hope also everybody has a blessed Easter. I hope everybody doesn't eat too much because then you nap all day and then your day goes away. Uh, don't do that. Go out, spend time with the family, enjoy your day. It's supposed to be a beautiful one where we're at. We'll be outside all day. So, thank you for coming back, returning, listening, and thank you for giving me such good feedback and welcome me with open arms. This is the third show I've now done with Greg, and I love it every time. I love the topics that we talk about. We stay, I think, in my opinion, very unbiased. We stick to the facts. We give them to you clear to where they make sense. And you guys, I think y'all will let us know if we have a show where things don't make sense or we need to touch on something a little bit more. Maybe you enjoyed that little subject more and you think we have more to say on it. Yeah, let us know. And I just also want to say, I I am very much. This is kind of goes to my personal opinion, right? I am very much happy with everything that the Trump administration is doing, and we touched on this on another podcast that you and I did. We didn't vote for Donald Trump because his name was Donald Trump and he has a lot of money. We voted for Donald Trump because he's speaking to the middle class. He's speaking to the Christian class. He's speaking to the Americans who know and understand what America could and should be. He is trying to bring infrastructure back after 2.8% of our entire GDP being exports last year, majority being soybeans. He's trying to fix our economy. He's trying to fix our foreign relations, pulling us out of NATO. And when we were spending 80% of the bill, we were fronting 80% of the bill in NATO continuously. Not to be exaggeratory, but I do believe there is a case to be made that he is, quote unquote, saving America, right? And creating a better future for people like me who are young and even younger, right? It's the future is looking brighter than it has in the last 4 years, and we very much appreciate that. That's why we voted for Trump, and that's why we don't regret our vote. And I'll plug my socials at the end. I'll let you go ahead and get your ending out, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right. Sounds good. Major takeaway, just on my end, I'll make this quick. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, their hypocrisy. Be aware of the leaven, that which is fermented, that they cause to rise up. Here we have a state, Maryland, and a senator from Maryland that is trying to get an MS-13 gang member brought back to his state. But yet, I cannot exercise my Second Amendment right in that state. Let that sink in. Where can they find you there, Brother Dave?
Okay, all right. So you can find me on YouTube at Why Try Blaze Politics. If you type in just Why Try Blaze, it'll bring up my gaming. You got to make sure you type in Why Try Blaze Politics, okay? We've got 70 subscribers over there, and we actually are going to upload another video today covering this Garcia situation. If you guys want to go and show support, a subscribe and a like is a great way to do it. And thank you, like I said, everybody on here for listening. Anybody who's on TikTok, you can find me on TikTok at Why Try Blaze. We upload daily there. We do a live show. But I think the majority of this audience will probably find more interest in the YouTube side of things. So that's where you can find me again. Why Try Blaze Politics. Yeah, and leave me a comment, and I'll make sure to get back with you, and we can have a little back and forth in the comments if you want to pick my brain a little bit, right? So, yep, thank you to Smokehouse Studios for having me once again, and you guys rock, and we're gonna get out of here.
All right, that sounds good, man. Well, thank you for being a part again, Dave. Man, I've really enjoyed this. Think the show went great. I know this week we've probably been a little bit more of an echo chamber than sharing anything new, but it's important. It's important to piece it all together with the other things that are involved. Not just. I know you've probably heard this Garcia issue ad nauseum, but once you see it in a whole with everything else, then you really start to understand. Oh yeah, they're building a narrative here. They're building a narrative, and in my opinion, that's going to be their next impeachment attempt. Okay, defying the courts over this immigration issue. So, we're going to see how this all plays out. But anyway, folks, hey, have a happy Easter, Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise. Hopefully, we'll see you next weekend. Until then, I'm Old Smokehouse and Brother Dave. Bye bye.
Smokehouse.